Good morning, my wonderful students. My name is Mrs. Omidiji. Today, we'll be talking about journals. But before we go there, I want to remind us of what we treated last class. We treated source documents. And source documents can be defined as the first books in which the account recordings are being first recorded into. Types of source documents includes invoice, receipt, debit note, credit note, vouchers, check, and so on and so forth. So this week we'll be moving to the topic journals. Journals. And at the end of the day, the student should be able to explain the meaning of journals, list different types of journals, identify the content of book of original entry. What is journals? Journal can be defined as the principal book of original entry, where daily records are being recorded. As a businessman and as a businesswoman, when you are selling or you are buying, it is important to record your daily business transactions. It is impossible for you to have all the records of your sales or all the records of your purchases over the years in your brain. You can forget along the line, but keeping records of it will enable you to make reference back to it. So journals are the original entry in which the daily transactions, most especially credit daily transactions, are being recorded into. And it is important for you to know as well that for every transactions that you do in journals, it is called entry. It is called what? It is called entry. That will take us to another subtopic, which is types of journals. Journals can be divided into two major groups. The first one is general journals. The second one is special journal, and we're going to be looking at it one after the other. From the word general journals, this is where every transactions that you make, either sales or purchases, is being recorded directly. Sales or purchases, you record it directly in the general journals. And general journals have a format. It has like 5 columns. The first column is date, the second column is particulars, the third column is folio, the the fourth column is account to be debited, and the fifth column is account to be credited. Let's explain this one after the other. Date is where you record the actual day the transaction took place into, to serve as reference day for the date the transaction took place. Particulars can be said to be description of the transactions, description of the transactions. And the folio has to do with reference number. Account to be debited, if it is coming in, you debit it, and account to be credited, if it is going out, you credit it. That is general journals. We're now moving on to special journals. Special journals are divided into subtopics, which includes purchases journal, sales journal, return inward journal, and return outward journals. And we're going to be taking it one after the other. Number one special journal is purchase journal. There is another name for purchase journal, which is purchase daybook. As a matter of fact, journals can as well be called daybook. Take note of that. Journals can as well be called day books, and you use it to record goods that you purchase or you bought on credit. Take for an instance, you don't have enough money to make some purchases, but you already have a customer, and you went to meet this customer. At a later date, I would pay for the goods, and the customer agrees. Once there is agreement from the supplier to you, the buyer, the sales will take place, but it is on credit basis. Now, purchases journal, you use it to record every purchases that is done on credit. You might be wondering, what do I mean by credit? Credit is, in this context, credit purchase on credit means when you purchase goods without payment, for later payment. You did not pay immediately. That is credit purchase. And you had all the transactions that you have bought on credit together and put it on the debit side of the purchase account. That is purchase journal. Don't forget, another name for purchase journal is purchase day book. Then the next one that we are going to look at is sales journal. Sales journal. Sales journal as well is used to record all the transaction on credit that you do. You sold on credit. All the transactions that you sold on credit. You as a seller, you were being, a buyer came to you and wanted you to sell goods to her or to him on credit. The moment you agreed to sell, once you sold that goods to the person, the transaction that took place as at that time, you record it on your own side, and the book that you record it into is called sales journal. You have addition of all the sales entries, all the sales transactions that you did. You have their recordings in one book, which is called sales journal. And at the end of the day, you had it together to have it recorded on this debit side of the sales account. The next one that we are going to look into is the return outward journals. Return outward journals. Return outward journals has another name called return outward day book. Don't forget, I told you that another name for journal is called day book. And there is an illustration for the explanation of return outward journals. It is associated to the purchase. When you go to the seller as a buyer to buy some goods, now that we are talking about on credit, and you got home or you go to your shop and discovered that there are some goods that were not okay from what you have bought, you cannot keep those goods with you. You have to return them. In returning them, for your account to be balanced at the end of the day, you need to have your record down that this good that I bought from so and so person, one or two is not good among them, and I've hence return it to the person. What will serve as your evidence of returning it is return outward journals or return outward day book. I hope you are following what I'm trying to explain to you. Let me take that again because it is usually confusing. Return outward journal is a special journal that it is being used by the buyer. When a buyer went to a seller to purchase goods on credit, for the fact that you are purchasing it on credit does not mean that once the goods is spoiled that you have to keep it to yourself, or once the good is not up to standard that you have to keep it to yourself. You will return it to the seller. you as the buyer will return it to the seller and let the seller know that this good has defect or it is not up to the standard of the goods that you can sell out. Now, when you are to return this good back to the seller, there must be a record track for it. This record track is called Return Outward Journal or Return Outward Day Book. And it is usually being used by the buyer, like I said. The next one that we are going to look at is sales returns or return inward journals. I gave you an illustration at the return outward journals the other time that it is related to buyer. But in the place of sales return or sales return or return inward journal, it is the seller that is related to. The recording will be done by the seller. And before the recording is being done by the seller, the buyer must have returned the goods, have it recorded in the return outward book. Then the seller will now in turn record it in the return inward journals to have a record track that has sold out certain goods out truly. But along the line, the same person I sold the goods to eventually returned part of it as a result of that it was not good or it has defect or it's not even up to standard. Then in that case, the seller can now issue out credit notes so that when recording is being done, the accounts can be balanced. Why will the seller record the return inward goods in the return inward journals? I will give you an illustration. You know, when the buyer came to the seller to purchase goods, the buyer on his mind have made some sales. And either being paid for or not being paid for, he has made some sales, but he knew that it was done on credit. And once it was being done on credit, though not yet paid for, but it has been sold out. So he has recorded it that it has been sold out. Now that there was return from the buyer as a result of defect or the goods not being up to standard, that means that the number of goods sold out cannot be up to the initial record, so that they will not be having a shoot up or expecting higher price from the seller, from the buyer, and that along the line the buyer will not pay that certain higher price. If the price is 10,000 naira for the goods purchased and the customer have returned 2 out of the 10, which cost 1,000 naira each, that means the customer, which is the buyer, supposed to pay 8,000 naira at a later date. If the seller did not record it in the sales return journal that the buyer have returned 2 goods out of it, the seller will still be thinking that the buyer will pay 10,000 naira. Meanwhile, the buyer is supposed to pay now 8,000 naira. For reconciliation of that 2,000 naira, the reconciliation can be gotten from the sales return goods. Are you with me? So that is why it is very, very important for you to know that journals is a book used to record goods done, the sales done on credit or the purchases done on credit. And I will quickly give you a recap of what we treated today. The topic was journals, and I've known that at the end of the lesson, we are able to define what journal is, the different types of journals, and identify the content in the original book of entry. Journal is the principal book of entry where you record the credit transactions. And for every transaction that you do in journal, it is called entry. Then the types of journal that we treated includes general journal and special journal. Remember that in general journal, you record the transaction done both on sales or purchases. You record it together in general journals, and it has 5 columns where you can make as your heading for recording the date, the particulars, the folio, the account to be debited, and the account to be credited. The date serve as reference, the folio serve as description, the particular serve as description, the folio serve as reference number. Why the account to be debited and to be credited signifies that which one is coming in and which one is going out. Then we moved to the special journals. We have 4 special journals. The first one is purchases journal, which is as well known as purchases daybook. And I've told you that it is only used to record the transaction, credit transaction done while you purchase on credit. You don't miss sales with this. Solely meant for purchases. And after you have recorded all the purchases that you did, you add them together and you transfer it to the debit side of the purchase account. And the next one is sales journal. The sales journal is used to record the credit transaction made, sold out to the customers on credit. The transaction sold out to the customers on credit. You had all the transactions recorded for the day and you total it, you record it on the debit side of the sales account. Then the next one is return outward journals, which is also known as return outward daybook. That has to do with the buyer. When the buyer returns the goods, that's the book the buyer will record the returned goods. And the last one, which is not the least, is the sales return inward, sales return journals or return inward journals, whereby when the buyer return the goods, the seller receiving it will record it in the sales return inward journal or sales return inward daybook. We have come to the end of the lesson, but I want you to, for further study, to check the textbook of A.S. Omosuyole, Comprehensive Business Studies, and the lesson notes as well serve as your reference notes. It has been uploaded on the website. Download it, copy the notes, and you can use it for further studies. Till we meet in the next class, just stay safe and take good care of yourself. Thank you.